In the year 633, the Persian Empire stood as an insurmountable force, its armies numbering over 40,000 warriors. Against them, a single man, Abu Musa al-Ashari, led a mere 4,000. The fate of the early Islamic conquests hung in the balance. How could such a small force hope to prevail against the might of Persia? The stakes were clear. Failure meant the retreat of the Muslim armies, the loss of newly conquered territories, and a blow to the growing unity of the Ummah. The Persian Empire, with its vast resources and seasoned troops, was not to be underestimated. But Abu Musa al-Ashari, a devoted companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was not a man to back down from a challenge. As Al-Tabari recorded in his Tarikh, Abu Musa chose a strategy that relied not on brute force, but on cunning and divine guidance. He knew the terrain of Iraq well, having spent years in the region. The Euphrates River, with its marshy banks and narrow passes, would be his greatest ally. He decided to divide his forces, sending a smaller contingent to engage the Persians directly, while the main army remained hidden, ready to strike when the moment was right. The Persians, confident in their numbers, advanced with reckless abandon. Their leaders, among them the famed General Rustam Farrakhzad, underestimated the resolve of the Muslim forces. As Ibn al-Athir notes in Al-Kamil, the Persian army was caught off guard when the main Muslim force emerged from their hidden position, trapping the Persians between two fronts. The Battle of al-Qadisiyah became a testament to Abu Musa's strategic genius. Yet, even the most brilliant plans can face unforeseen challenges. According to Al-Tabari, Abu Musa faced a moment of doubt as scouts reported that the Persians were reinforcing their positions. The tide of battle seemed to turn against the Muslims. But Abu Musa, ever steadfast in his faith, turned to prayer. He reminded his men of the promise of Allah's support as recorded in the Quran. If you help him not, still he helped him, and a supporter worthy of trust. Surah at-Tawbah 9:40. The resolution came swiftly. The Persian lines, stretched thin and disorganized, crumbled under the coordinated assault of the Muslim forces. The battle lasted for days, but by the end, the Persian Empire had suffered a decisive defeat. The exact number of casualties remains uncertain, but Ibn al-Athir estimates that over 20,000 Persians fell in battle, while Muslim losses were a fraction of that number. But the story does not end with victory. As the dust settled on the battlefield, a new challenge emerged. News arrived of a massive Byzantine army marching towards Syria, intent on reclaiming the territories lost to the Muslims. The letter that arrived that night would change everything. 700 Muslims stood at the gates of Babylon, facing an empire that had ruled for centuries. The Byzantine stronghold of Egypt, Fort Babylon, was the key to the entire region. This was not just a military campaign. It was a test of faith, a battle for the soul of North Africa. If Abu Musa al-Ashari failed, the momentum of the Muslim conquests would stall, and the Byzantine Empire would regroup, threatening the very existence of the newly formed Islamic State. As Al-Tabari recorded in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, Abu Musa had divided his forces strategically, sending some under the command of Amr ibn al-As to engage the Byzantines at the crucial city of Heliopolis, while he himself led the siege of Babylon. The city was a fortress, its high walls and strategic location making it nearly impregnable. Ibn al-Athir notes in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh that the Byzantines had fortified Babylon extensively, aware of its importance. Abu Musa knew that a direct assault would likely fail, given the disparity in numbers. The Byzantines had amassed a significant force within the city, and the Muslim army was vastly outnumbered. The tactical reasoning behind Abu Musa's strategy was clear. He understood that the key to victory lay not in brute force, but in patience and psychological warfare. He ordered his men to dig trenches around the city, cutting off supply routes and isolating the Byzantines. This was a tactic that would become a hallmark of Muslim military strategy, as recorded by Ibn Khaldun in al-Muqaddimah. The siege was not just about starving the enemy into submission, it was about breaking their will. Abu Musa sent messengers to the Byzantines, offering them the choice to surrender and be treated with honor, or to resist and face the consequences. This approach reflected the Islamic principle of offering peace even in the midst of war. According to Al-Tabari, the Byzantines initially scoffed at the offer. They believed their fortifications and numbers would ensure their victory. However, as weeks turned into months, the pressure began to tell. The Byzantines were running low on supplies, and morale was dwindling. The Muslims, on the other hand, were buoyed by their faith and the knowledge that they were fighting for a righteous cause. Abu Musa's leadership was tested during this period. He had to maintain the discipline and morale of his men, who were also facing the hardships of a prolonged siege. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, Abu Musa would often lead the prayers and remind his men of the rewards promised by Allah for their perseverance. The crisis came when the Byzantines launched a desperate counterattack, breaking through the trenches and catching the Muslims off guard. As Al-Tabari reports, Abu Musa quickly rallied his men, repositioning them to counter the attack. He ordered the trenches to be reinforced and additional defenses to be put in place. This was a critical moment, as a failure here could have led to the collapse of the siege. Abu Musa's calm and decisive leadership in the face of this setback was exemplary. He reminded his men of the Prophet Muhammad's words, "The strength of the believer lies in his patience," a hadith recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari. The resolution came when the Byzantines, weakened by the prolonged siege and the failed counterattack, finally succumbed. They sent envoys to Abu Musa, requesting terms of surrender. Abu Musa, true to his character, offered them generous terms. The Byzantines were allowed to leave the city safely with their families and possessions, a testament to the Islamic principle of mercy and justice, even in victory. As Ibn Khaldun noted in al-Muqaddimah, this approach not only secured the victory, but also won the hearts of the local population, who saw the Muslims as liberators rather than conquerors. As the dust settled and the Muslims took control of Babylon, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The Byzantine Empire, though weakened, was not yet ready to admit defeat. Reports began to surface of a new army being assembled, ready to retake Egypt. The letter that arrived that night would change everything, setting the stage for the next chapter in the epic saga of Abu Musa al-Ashari. The year was 642 CE, and the caliphate of Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, faced a quandary. Egypt, a land of untold wealth and strategic significance, was divided between two of its greatest generals, Amr ibn al-As and Abu Musa al-Ashari. The two commanders, each with his own army, had been tasked with subduing the Byzantine holdouts in the Nile Delta, but their differing approaches had led to a stalemate. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil fi al-Tarikh, Amr ibn al-As had secured a decisive victory at the Battle of Babylon, but the Byzantine forces, though weakened, still clung to control over parts of the region. The situation was delicate. If the division between the two Muslim armies persisted, the Byzantines might exploit the rift to regroup and launch a counteroffensive. The caliphate's grip on Egypt could be jeopardized, and the considerable resources of the land, its grain, its ports, and its strategic location, might slip from their grasp. The stakes were high, and the need for unity was paramount. Amr ibn al-As, known for his aggressive tactics, had pushed forward with relentless determination. He had captured Babylon and secured a foothold in the heart of Egypt, but his approach had not been without controversy. Abu Musa al-Ashari, on the other hand, was renowned for his prudence and diplomacy. He had strategically divided his forces to maintain control over key regions, ensuring that the Byzantines could not regroup unchallenged. However, this had led to friction between the two commanders. The tension between them came to a head in the city of Alexandria, where the Byzantine forces had made their last stand. Amr ibn al-As, with his army of 12,000 men, was determined to take the city by force. Abu Musa, however, advocated for a more measured approach, preferring negotiation and gradual encroachment to minimize casualties and maintain stability. As Al-Tabari recorded in his Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, the disagreement between the two commanders threatened to derail the entire campaign. The crisis reached its peak when Abu Musa received a letter from Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab. The letter instructed both generals to refrain from further conflict and to seek a resolution that would unite their forces under a single command. Abu Musa, ever the diplomat, saw this as an opportunity to resolve the dispute peacefully. He proposed a meeting with Amr ibn al-As to discuss the terms of unity. The meeting took place in the shadow of the great lighthouse of Alexandria, a beacon of knowledge and power that had watched over the Mediterranean for centuries. As Ibn Kathir notes in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, the two commanders sat across from one another, the weight of their disagreement hanging in the air. Abu Musa spoke first, his voice calm and measured. He reminded Amr ibn al-As of their shared goal, to bring Egypt under the banner of Islam and to ensure the stability of the caliphate. Amr ibn al-As listened, his expression unreadable. He was a man of action, and the idea of surrendering his command to a more cautious approach was not an easy one to accept. However, he also recognized the wisdom in Abu Musa's words. The caliph's instructions were clear, and the unity of the Muslim forces was paramount. In the end, Amr ibn al-As agreed to Abu Musa's proposal. The two commanders would combine their forces, with Abu Musa taking the lead in negotiations and Amr ibn al-As overseeing the military operations. The decision was a testament to their mutual respect and their commitment to the greater good of the caliphate. The resolution of the conflict between Amr ibn al-As and Abu Musa al-Ashari was a turning point in the conquest of Egypt. With their forces united, the Muslims were able to exert unrelenting pressure on the Byzantine strongholds. The city of Alexandria, the last major Byzantine outpost in Egypt, was now within their grasp. As Al-Dhahabi recorded in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, the Byzantines, facing the combined might of the two Muslim armies, had no choice but to surrender. But even as the Muslims celebrated their victory, new challenges loomed on the horizon. The Byzantine Empire, though weakened, was not yet ready to relinquish its claims to Egypt. Rumors of a new Byzantine army gathering in Syria reached the ears of the Muslim commanders, and the question of how to respond to this new threat would test the resolve of Amr ibn al-As and Abu Musa al-Ashari once more. With 12,000 Muslim soldiers facing a Roman army of 50,000, Amr ibn al-As had no room for error. The Byzantine forces, reinforced by Christian Arabs led by Jabin ibn Akhar and Kanza, were determined to crush the Muslim foothold in Egypt. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil, the Romans gathered their might, swearing to erase the Muslims from the land of Egypt. The stakes were monumental. Egypt was the breadbasket of the Byzantine Empire, and its loss would cripple the Romans. For the Muslims, it was a strategic gateway to North Africa and beyond. Failure meant retreating from Egypt, a humiliation that could embolden enemies from Persia to Syria. The Muslim forces, though fewer, were seasoned veterans of the conquests of Syria and Iraq, their faith and discipline unwavering. Amr ibn al-As chose the town of Helwan as the battleground. Located southeast of Fustat, its rugged terrain favored his smaller force. He divided his 12,000 men into 3 divisions, one under his command, another led by Abu Musa al-Ashari, and the third under the warrior poet Kharija ibn Hudhafa. His strategy was simple yet bold. Draw the Byzantine forces into the narrow passes around Helwan, where their numerical advantage would be neutralized. The Romans, overconfident in their numbers, marched toward Helwan. As al-Tabari recounts in al-Tarikh al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, the Romans advanced like a tidal wave, their banners fluttering in the wind, their armor gleaming under the sun. Their plan was to encircle the Muslims and crush them in a decisive battle. Amr ibn al-As faced a moment of grave doubt. Scouts reported that the Byzantine forces had split into 2 wings, intending to surround the Muslim army. The terrain, though favorable, now seemed treacherous. The Muslims were outnumbered, and any misstep could lead to disaster. He turned to prayer, seeking guidance from Allah. "O Allah, guide us and grant us victory over the disbelievers," he prayed, his faith unshaken. The crisis deepened as the Byzantine forces closed in. The Christian Arab allies, familiar with the land, exploited every advantage. But Amr ibn al-As remained steadfast. He ordered his men to hold their positions, using the rugged terrain to their advantage. The Muslims fought with ferocious determination, their faith driving them forward. As Ibn Kathir notes in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, the Muslims stood like a wall of iron, their swords flashing, their voices raised in takbir. The tactical genius of Amr ibn al-As became evident as the Byzantine forces found themselves trapped in the narrow passes. Their numerical superiority was rendered useless. The Muslims, fighting with unwavering resolve, began to push back. The Byzantine lines faltered, and panic spread among their ranks. The Muslim cavalry, led by Kharija ibn Hudhafa, launched a devastating counterattack, breaking the enemy's resolve. The resolution of the battle came swiftly. The Romans, realizing their mistake, attempted to retreat but found themselves trapped. The Muslims pursued relentlessly, inflicting heavy losses. The battlefield became a testament to the power of faith and strategy. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, the earth shook with the cries of the dying, and the Muslims emerged victorious, their flags flying high. But the victory at Helwan was not the end. The Byzantine Empire, though defeated, was not broken. News reached Amr ibn al-As of a new Roman army gathering in Syria, ready to avenge their defeat. The letter that arrived that night would change everything. It spoke of a new threat, larger and more formidable than any they had faced before. With 12,000 men against 60,000, Abu Musa al-Ashari had a choice: retreat or face annihilation in the heart of Egypt. The stakes were clear. Failure would mean the collapse of the Muslim campaign, allowing the Byzantines to regroup and push them out of Egypt entirely. The city of Alexandria, with its towering walls and strategic harbor, was the key. Its fall would secure the entire Nile Delta, but its defenses were formidable, and the Byzantine forces inside were numerous. Abu Musa chose to divide his forces, sending a smaller contingent to besiege Alexandria while keeping the main army mobile, ready to strike at any Byzantine reinforcements. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, Abu Musa reasoned that a prolonged siege would weaken the city, while his mobile forces could intercept any relief armies before they reached Alexandria. The terrain was harsh, with deserts to the east and the Mediterranean to the north, leaving little room for maneuver. But Abu Musa was confident in his strategy: control the city, cut off its supplies, and starve it into submission. The initial stages of the siege went as planned. The Muslim forces, though outnumbered inside the city, were disciplined and relentless. The Byzantines, however, were not idle. They launched repeated sorties, testing the Muslim lines, and for a time it seemed the siege might falter. According to al-Tabari, Abu Musa paused. His scouts reported that a large Byzantine fleet was approaching from Cyprus, intent on breaking the siege. The choice was stark: lift the siege and face certain defeat, or hold firm and risk being cut off by sea. Abu Musa chose to hold. He ordered his men to dig trenches around the city, reinforcing their positions while preparing for the naval assault. The Byzantines, confident in their numbers, launched their attack ships filled with soldiers aiming to land and relieve the city. But Abu Musa had anticipated this. He had stationed archers along the coastline, and as the Byzantine ships approached, a hail of arrows rained down, forcing many to turn back. The few that landed were quickly overwhelmed by the waiting Muslim forces. The siege dragged on for months. Inside Alexandria, supplies dwindled and morale sagged. Ibn al-Athir notes that the Byzantines, desperate, attempted negotiations, but Abu Musa stood firm. Surrender was the only option. Finally, after 14 months of relentless pressure, the city capitulated. The Muslim forces entered Alexandria not as conquerors, but as deliverers, offering the people security under the covenant of Islam. But as the dust settled, a new challenge loomed. Reports reached Abu Musa of Byzantine forces gathering in Syria, ready to march on Egypt. The war was far from over, and the Ummah's hold on this vital land still hung in the balance. With Alexandria under Muslim control, a new governor was appointed, Cyrus of Alexandria, a former Coptic bishop who had converted to Islam. His rule was short-lived. Within months, the city rebelled, and Cyrus vanished without a trace. His disappearance left a power vacuum, and the Muslims faced a critical decision: how to reclaim the city without provoking a full-scale Byzantine counterattack. The stakes were high. If Alexandria fell back into Byzantine hands, the Muslim conquest of Egypt would be undermined. The city was a strategic prize, a gateway to the Mediterranean, and a symbol of Roman power. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab was deeply concerned. He sent a clear message to the Muslim commanders: do not let this city slip from our grasp. Amr ibn al-As, the conqueror of Egypt, was tasked with reclaiming Alexandria. He assembled his forces, but the challenge was immense. The Byzantines had reinforced the city, and the rebels were determined. According to al-Tabari in al-Tarikh, al-Rusul wa al-Muluk, Amr had only 8,000 men, while the Byzantines and their allies numbered nearly 20,000. The city's walls were strong, and the navy patrolled the harbor, cutting off reinforcements. Amr's strategy was bold. He divided his forces, sending a detachment to threaten the Byzantine supply lines from the sea while he launched a direct assault on the city's landward defenses. The goal was to pressure the rebels from multiple directions, forcing them to divide their attention. As Ibn Kathir noted in al-Bidaya wa al-Nihaya, Amr chose this tactic because he understood the psychological impact of a multi-pronged attack. The rebels, already shaken by Cyrus's disappearance, would struggle to coordinate their defense. The plan encountered a setback. The Byzantine navy, under the command of the patrician Constantine, intercepted Muslim supply ships cutting off vital reinforcements. Morale among the Muslim forces wavered. According to al-Tabari, Amr gathered his commanders and prayed to Allah for guidance. The decision was critical. Should they retreat and regroup or press forward despite the odds? Amr chose to press forward, relying on the wisdom of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the teachings of Islam. He ordered his men to dig trenches around the city, cutting off the rebels' supply routes. The Byzantines, secure behind their walls, underestimated the Muslims' resolve. However, Amr's tactic began to take its toll. The rebels, unable to resupply, grew desperate. The turning point came when Amr's forces launched a surprise night assault, scaling the city's walls under cover of darkness. The Byzantines, caught off guard, were unable to mount an effective defense. As Ibn al-Athir recorded, the Muslims fought with unmatched ferocity, driven by their faith and the knowledge that Allah was with them. By dawn, the city was theirs once more. But the victory was bittersweet. Cyrus's fate remained a mystery, and whispers of Byzantine retaliation filled the air. What nobody knew was that across the sea, a new army was already gathering, ready to challenge Muslim rule in Egypt once again.